friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today our topic is the posterior cranial fossa. You can see that the posterior cranial fossa lies in the posterior part of the cranium and it is separated from the middle cranial fossa by the petrous part of the temporal bone. So the posterior cranial fossa, it is formed by the four bones: the sphenoid bone, the temporal bone, the parietal bones, and the posterior surface. You can see that this is the occipital bone. So the main important features of the posterior cranial fossa, you can see that the body of the sphenoid, this is the sloping surface. You can see that this is the sloping surface of the on the posterior surface of the foramen magnum formed by the body of the sphenoid, and this sloping surface, it is called as the clivus. And next is the important feature of the posterior cranial fossa is the main and the larger foramen. You can see this is the foramen magnum, and in the occipital part you can see that there is a crest. You can see that this is the internal occipital crest. It is the vertical bony ridge formed from the occipital protuberance to the foramen magnum. This is the occipital protuberance, and this is the ridge formed till the foramen magnum. Next is the, you can see that this is the groove. There is the groove. This is the groove for the transverse sinus on the both sides, and this is the groove for the sigmoid sinus. This is the transverse sinus and this is the sigmoid sinus. Next, you can see that there are the two depressions, the two hollow or oval depressions, you can see, and these depressions are called as the cerebellar fossa, and in these cerebellar fossa the cerebellum is found. Next important feature in the posterior cranial fossa is that this is the foramen. You can see this is the internal auditory meatus, and through the posterolateral part of the internal auditory meatus you can see that this is the line, yeah, this is the depression, and this is called as the aqueduct of the vestibule. It is a slit behind the internal auditory meatus. Important and the main features of the posterior cranial fossa is that the foramens. So the first foramen is that we have already studied, that is the internal auditory meatus, and through this internal auditory meatus facial nerve, vestibulocochlear nerve, nerve intermedius, and the internal auditory vessels passes through this internal auditory meatus. So the next important foramen is that you can see this is the jugular foramen. This is the jugular foramen, and the jugular foramen is divided into the three parts: anterior part, middle part, and the posterior part. The anterior part lodges the inferior petrosal sinus. The interior part, this is the anterior part, it lodges the inferior petrosal sinus, and the middle part you can see that the 9th, 10th, and the 11th cranial nerve passes through the middle part of the jugular foramen. As you have seen in the picture that the 10th and the 11th cranial nerve lies in the common sheath of the dura mater. In the middle part, the 10th and the 11th cranial nerve lies in the common sheath of the dura mater, and 9th cranial nerve lies in the independent sheath of the dura mater. Next is the posterior part of the jugular foramen, and the sigmoid sinus passes through this posterior part of the sigmoid sinus. Next important foramen, you can see that this is the foramen magnum, and foramen magnum to the lateral part of this you can see that this is the foramen. This is the foramen, and this is called as the hypoglossal canal. This is the hypoglossal canal, and through this hypoglossal nerve and the meningeal branch of the ascending pharyngeal artery passes through this hypoglossal canal. Next is the posterior condylar canal. We cannot see in this view, we can see in the basilar portion. Some books also refer that this foramen is included in the basilis view, but it is also included in the posterior cranial fossa. Now, so the posterior cranial fossa, you can see that this foramen, this is the posterior condylar canal, and through this posterior condylar canal, emissary vein and the meningeal branch of the occipital artery passes through this posterior condylar canal. The next and the last important foramen of the posterior cranial fossa is that you can see this is the foramen magnum. This is the largest, and you can see this is the foramen magnum, and It is divided into two parts by the Eller ligament. Through the Eller ligament, the foramen magnum is divided into two parts. This is the anterior part and this is the posterior part. Through the anterior part, apical ligament. So you can see this is the anterior part and this is the posterior part of the foramen magnum. Through the anterior part of the foramen magnum, apical ligament of the dens, upper band of the cruciform ligament of the atlas, and the membrane tectoria, the tectorial membrane of the cerebellum passes through the anterior part of the foramen magnum. And through the posterior part of the foramen magnum, medulla oblongata and the two posterior spinal artery passes through the foramen magnum. So this is the posterior cranial fossa, and I have written in the short notes. I have explained to you that from which bones it is formed from it. Important features in the median area is the clivus and the foramen magnum, internal occipital crest, internal occipital protuberance, groove for the transverse and the sigmoid sinus, cerebellar fossa. I have explained to you all the features and the foramens and the canals. I have explained to you internal auditory meatus, jugular foramen, anterior, middle and the posterior parts, hypoglossal canal, posterior condylar canal, and the foramen magnum, which is divided into the two parts, anterior compartment and the posterior compartment. By the Eller ligament it is divided. I hope you liked the video. Please like, subscribe and share with your friends. See you soon in the next video. Allah Hafiz.